To quote the National Trust guidebook, nobody forgets their first sight of Blickling, a sumptuous confection of local red brick and Ketton limestone, Dutch gables and turrets framed by massive yew hedges, and service wings with even more picturesque gables. Blickling is everyone's idea of a great Jacobean country house. Let's start by moving through the right-hand service block, catching more views of the south front on our way, and then emerging into the formal garden area overlooked by the east front. Whilst we take a walk through the gardens, I'd like to tell you a little of the history of Blickling. The hall has its origins in a rectangular moated house built in the 1390s for Sir Nicholas Dagworth. This was acquired later by the Boleyn family and is reputedly the birthplace of Henry VIII's second wife, Anne Boleyn. In 1616, the Blickling estate was bought by Sir Henry Hubbard, a successful London lawyer, and he undertook a restyling of the hall in Jacobean style using the architect Robert Limminge. Limminge was already famous for building Hatfield House for James I's First Minister Robert Cecil, the Earl of Salisbury. The similarities in style between Hatfield and Blickling are striking. The corner towers with their ogee-style roofs and the gables that define the roofline being the most obvious. Limminge retained much of the earlier moated building whilst creating a new south front with flanking service wings and a new east front overlooking the gardens. All of this in the Jacobean style. Blickling Hall, since the early 17th century, has passed down through the descendants and family of Sir Henry Hubbard, sometimes through the female line, and finally being passed to the National Trust by the 11th Marquess of Lothian in 1940. Over the centuries, many further changes were made by the owners, probably the most significant being those made in the 1760s by Sir John Hubbard, 2nd Earl of Buckinghamshire, initially with his architects Thomas and William Ivory. This work included the replacement of the now decaying Tudor ranges in the western north with modern buildings stylistically in keeping with Sir Henry's Jacobean work of a century and a half earlier. The 18th century north front work was faithful to the Jacobean design, although only the east gable and tower are actually Jacobean. The central projection, with its balustrade and pedimented windows, and the western Dutch gable are to William Ivory's 1765 design. The western tower is in part a Tudor survival and is narrower than the other three corner towers. The west front was regarded as the least successful part of the 18th century works architecturally, having a completely straight parapet and ill bonded into some of the existing works. From 1864 this was rebuilt by William Byrne, incorporating Dutch gables and other ornamentation which had been suggested by John A. D. Repton in 1821. Before we go inside the hall, let's take a gentle stroll back past the east front, taking time to view some of the architectural detail. We'll also take a brief detour down into the moat. Arriving back at the south front, there are several interesting features to note. The entrance bridge with its ornamental arrow loops. This is the only survivor of a pierced balustrade which originally fronted the moat. Then there are the two bulls standing on the bridge. These are the Hubbard crest. Over the bridge is the entrance doorway, flanked by Doric columns and with more Hubbard bulls above, flanking the escutcheons of Sir Henry and his wife. Above is the clock tower built by John A.D. Repton after 1828 and replacing an 18th century structure. The clock dates from around 1780. The much restored timber door carries the date of completion of the south front, 1620, and gives access to the stone court. From the stone court one gains access to the great hall. As you enter the hall, you are faced with a grand timber staircase. When Limminge built the Jacobean Hall in 1620, this was the principal room of the house, built on the site of the medieval Great Hall. A century and a half later, the staircase, until then a single path affair located in the east front, was dismantled and rebuilt here, creating the stair hall. To provide two paths to the upper floor, Thomas and William Ivory had matching parts made in softwood, but the craftsmanship is fine and it is hard to detect the later work. Before going upstairs, we will visit the brown drawing room with its painted beam ceiling by J. H. Pollen, and the portraits of Constance, Countess of Lothian by Sir John Leslie, and Mary Tudor by Henry Shaw. The dining room has a fine 16th century portrait of Elizabeth I. The large oak overmantel, dated 1627, carries the arms of Sir Henry and his wife Dorothy. We re-enter the hall and find the 16th century portrait of King Henry VIII, attributed to the English school after Holbein. Now it's time to go upstairs and admire some of the pictures of the great and the good which adorn the staircase. The print room contains 52 18th century prints, several of which are by Piranesi. Next we go to the Lothian Row bathroom. Note the weighing chair. And now on to the west turret bedroom. The floral marquetry chest of drawers and the writing desk are Dutch 17th century. There is a fine Jacobean ceiling. We passed through the Chinese dressing room, noting the large Dutch floral marquetry cabinet, and on into the Chinese bedroom, where the bed is 17th century and has hangings made from an 18th century Norwich shawl bedspread, a very rare survival. Note the carved ivory pagodas. The south drawing room has one of the best Jacobean ceilings in the house. The chimney-piece is by Robert Limminge, and the fireback carries the arms of Elizabeth I. This portrait by Thomas Gibson is of Henrietta Hubbard, Countess of Suffolk. The room has a fine view over the parterre. The temple can be seen in the distance. The upper anteroom is the upper of two rooms that originally held the Jacobean staircase. The ceiling was worked by Robert Limminge himself. The long gallery has a fantastic ceiling executed by Edward Stannyan under the direction of Robert Limminge. The emblems in the ceiling come from Minerva Britannica of 1612 by Henry Peacham. The painted frieze is by the painter and architect John Hungerford Pollen, as are the fire dogs and the heraldic stained glass panes at the top of the north window, which represent the arms of the various lines of the family. The huge tapestry in the Peter the Great room was given to the second Earl of Buckinghamshire by Catherine the Great in 1765 at the end of his time as ambassador in St. Petersburg. The state bedroom is believed to have been designed by Samuel Wyatt and is a powerful statement in the neoclassical style. The portrait is of Sir Henry Hubbard, the builder of Blickling, painted by Daniel Mytons in 1624. The arms on the bed's headboard are those of King George II. We leave the hall via the northwest turret and stairs, and passed by the west service wing as we depart. A walk alongside the lake, which was created at some time before 1729, affords fine views of the hall and its reflection. And with this view of the hall, we come to the end of our visit. I hope you've enjoyed Blickling and will maybe return someday.